or afternoon or night, whatever time you're watching this. It is Saturday morning for me, and it's freezing. Oh my gosh. Whew. Tyler died on a Saturday morning, so they are hard for me, especially when I'm alone and don't have any other plans like today. So I'm giving myself a slow start, but I felt like I needed to just talk a little bit about grief. So I'm turning to this outlet to do that. I'm also trying something different with this video. The last two I posted have been kind of like serious sit-down videos, and I think they needed to be, but I also don't want to put myself in a box that way, and I want to allow like authenticity as I'm talking and living my life. So yeah, I wanted to feel like we're just kind of like we're friends just checking in, you know? So I'm gonna make myself some coffee and then we can chat. Grief is so weird, right? Like, it's so strange. And I think in part because of how we're like thrusted into it. Like, there's no warning. And I mean, even for people who receive a prognosis, there's no warning that that is going to happen. And then you start grieving before somebody even leaves. But like in my case, obviously I had absolutely no warning. And so you're just thrusted into this excruciating process, and it's confusing and it's exhausting. And at least for me, everything has felt like fully tilted, like the world is on a complete tilt. And so it's all of that and trying to process all of that when you're like completely off balance and disoriented. It's just so hard. I've learned a lot about grief these last 6 months. And I'm sure, you know, as you evolve in grief, you continue to learn and understand what works for you and, you know, how to survive. It's not that I want to share these lessons from the perspective of like, I've fully grasped this for myself and I've mastered it and I'm crushing this grief thing. And although I have been very much like an achievement focused person, that is a big lesson I've learned. Like, this isn't about achievement. There's no finish line. There's no timeline. There's no plan. Like, there's nothing, there's no one size fits all survival guide in grief. So the lessons I've learned and want to share are simply from the perspective of like, this is my lived experience. This is what I've gathered. I'm still working on applying all of these things in my life. But I've realized the sooner we can know these fundamental things about grief when we're in the tornado of early grief, then all of the things that we're experiencing and feeling won't be in addition to isolation or feeling crazy. I've I've felt so crazy. And then I've realized this is a common thing. This is part of grief and it's okay. So that's my goal in sharing this. And it's just also like a review for me, like reminders that I need daily. So I don't know. This is what I've got 6 months in. Okay, so like I said, this is just 6 months in and I've learned a ton and I will continue to learn a ton. So for this video, we're just gonna do like top 5 things that I've learned. And maybe there'll be a part 2, and honestly, there could be up to like part, 172, I'm sure. But we're just gonna do things that I found are what I need to be reminded of most right now, 6 months in. So, number 1, and this is an easy one. I think I knew this logically. I think we all think we know this logically before we experience a traumatic loss. But grief is different for everyone. We are all unique individuals. We all have unique personalities, and that certainly plays into grief. But also, grief is just as unique as each of our relationships are. And since no one else is in the relationship with you, no one else will fully understand your grief. And it's not really for anyone else to understand. I think I've had to remind myself that a lot. Like, Tyler was my person. And my grief is also mine. It's just mine to understand and to navigate however I feel I need to. Okay, number 2. Grief is not just about being super sad, depressed, low, like heavy. It can be all of those things, and it certainly has been for me. It's also so many other emotions, including joy. And I literally kind of cringe when I even say that, because it's like, how can you possibly feel joy in grief? But opposite emotions can coexist. They can. It's very strange, and it takes a lot of energy for all of these things to be coexisting all the time. But it's possible. And that is exhausting, completely exhausting. And I mean, that's a whole other thing we could talk about, but the exhaustion of grief is in a completely other realm. Maybe it will even out. For me, it has not. I feel exhausted all the time, no matter how much or little I sleep or rest or whatever. It's just part of it. It's just part of surviving right now. Okay, number 3. For me, grief has made everything else so much harder. I don't know if this is true for everyone, but I feel like things that used to be fairly simple or easy just feel so much harder. I have never been great at managing stress, I'll admit. And I struggle with anxiety, so that definitely plays a part. But my threshold for a breakdown is like so much lower than it used to be. And that's super frustrating for me. And it makes me feel insane. It makes me feel dramatic and less capable, which is a really just honestly hard pill to swallow for me. I just feel like I can't do the same things I used to do. And I have to remind myself that that's okay. That it's okay to just exist, just survive. And that's it. That's enough. Okay, number 4. This is a big one for me. I've come up with this little formula. I'm not a math person, but I'm pretty sure this is accurate. Judgment equals grief times 2, or maybe even grief to like the 2nd degree. It's exponential. And what I mean by this is, I've been feeling a million things in grief, all of the emotions, all of the feelings. And then I've also struggled with the judgment of how and what I'm feeling. So it's basically just like feeling it twice, which sucks. And it's like, why am I doing this to myself? I can't help it. It just happens, but I need this reminder that judgment is only making grief twice as hard or exponentially hard. It's like there's judgment from other people, usually completely unintentionally, but mostly I mean the judgment of myself. So what I mean by judgment of others, and again, I know everyone who has supported me has been with the absolute best intentions, and I know it's not meant to judge. I'm just explaining how things have landed for me. Okay, so for example, it could sound like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you're out right now. I could never do that. Like if my husband died, I would never leave the house. And what I'm hearing when someone says that is, do you think I'm not grieving properly? Or do you think that you love your husband more than I loved Tyler? And that's why you wouldn't be able to leave the house, but I can? And I know that might not at all be why someone would say that or what someone means in that moment, but that is how it feels to me. That's how I interpret it. I know no one means any harm by these statements, and I'm probably just projecting my own worries, honestly, which leads me to my own self-judgment. So that is all of the moments that I've felt something, usually like a positive emotion, a glimpse of happiness or joy or laughing, and then immediately judging myself for feeling that way, like feeling guilty that I could experience any ounce of joy. Or I've had moments where I feel absolutely nothing, which is weird. I'll be scrolling on Instagram, and I swear every time I open my phone, someone else is getting engaged, getting married, announcing a pregnancy, and I'm genuinely so happy for people. But also sometimes I feel nothing. And in other times I feel really angry and jealous, honestly. And then I feel like a bad person because I'm like, I should just be happy for these people. But I'm also so freaking mad that that was stolen from me. And it's like the flip-flop of like what I'm feeling, judging what I'm feeling, trying to remind myself that it's okay what I'm feeling. And it's so complicated. Ugh. And then sometimes I totally gaslight myself. Like I will be, deep in my bag about woe is me. And then I'm like, what are you doing? Your life isn't that bad. Like, you have a roof over your head. You have food on your table. You have a car. There are people who are so much worse off, and get it together. Like, stop feeling so sorry for yourself. And that's a hard spiral to be in too, because I know it's okay that I feel really sad for myself. I definitely have some things that are worthy of being sad over. And it's not about, comparing. It shouldn't ever be about comparing. So I have to try really hard to stop myself from these spirals and just allow myself to feel my feelings. It's just way easier said than done. Okay, and number 5, the last one for today, I actually have to grab a book. A friend of mine recommended this. It's called Option B, Facing Adversity, Building Resilience, and Finding Joy, and it's by Sheryl Sandberg and Adam Grant. Sheryl Sandberg also wrote Lean In. She was the executive at Facebook, and she lost her husband suddenly. And there's one diagram in here that I have referred to so many times, and it gave me so much relief. So I wanted to share it in case it could help someone else. Here it is. This might not be a clear picture, but this is a diagram of the flow of grief and comfort. So to explain my interpretation, those inside the circle, in the center of the circle, are who are closest to the person who died. So this might not mean biologically or legally. Tyler and I weren't married, so I had no legal obligation to anything, which logistically made some things harder and some things not so hard. But anyway, that's another story. I was the person living with him. I was his life partner, so that puts me at the center of the circle, along with his parents, for instance. And then the circle expands to those next closest to Tyler, and so on and so forth. And it basically explains that people should seek comfort outside the circle and offer comfort inside the circle. And what this told me was that me being in the center of the circle meant that I should not be expected to offer comfort to anyone from our loss. Now, Tyler was widely loved, so a lot of people are grieving with me. But it gave me so much relief to feel like I didn't need to comfort other people, because truly I didn't have the strength. I needed all of my strength for myself to survive. And I was feeling a lot of guilt about that. I felt guilty that I needed so much support and comfort. I felt guilty that I couldn't offer it to anyone else, knowing full well that people were in so much pain from this loss too. But this diagram really relieved that up for me. Like, I felt like, yes, this makes sense. That is why I have nothing to give anyone else. I need it for myself. And it's not about comparing loss. I think it's just a matter of recognizing who has strength to give and who doesn't. And it's okay. It's okay. And those are my first 5 lessons that I can share. And honestly, like I said, it's just the tip of the iceberg. Maybe we'll do a part 2 in a bit. But for now, sending light and love to you.